Welcome back, everybody. Today, what we're going to do is we're just going to add a few details to these questions about Columbus to make sure that you're definitely on the right track. Okay? So, as we go through these answers, if you think you have exactly what you need to have, then you shouldn't have to change much. You don't have to erase much or anything at all. But if you're totally off the mark, or if you just put no or yes or had a one or two word answer, you're going to have to add definitely some specific details. Okay. Now, real quick, before we start our conversation, I'm going to jump back to some of the things we've already talked about really fast to give you an idea of why we're talking about Columbus in the first place. Okay. So, again, we're talking about the age of exploration. And if you remember the basics of this map, you should understand that the Europeans are getting their goods from way over here in China and India, and they're going by this land route. But obviously, that land route is not going to work because there's different things going on. So, some people have some ideas. They decide, look, is there a way that we can go by water and get around to the same place? So, there's some people that feel like they should go south and go around Africa and maybe try to come over here, which does kind of work, but it still takes a lot of time. And there's even a group of people that think you can head westward and end up going around the backside of the entire Earth and coming over and hitting this side just the same. Because again, they don't know about these giant continents that are standing in the way. Okay. And that's where Columbus is going to jump in here because he's going to be the first person to actually make the trip this direction. Now, we haven't talked about whether he knows he discovered a new world or anything like that, but we're going to get to it. Okay. And once more, just to go over this real quick, if y'all remember, I said this is kind of the setup where you have Europe, you have Africa, albeit it's kind of wonky, and Asia with India and China are kind of wonky. But Columbus definitely feels like he can find a path to go around the entire Earth and hit the backside of China and India. Okay, so that's why he's going to be the first guy that we're going to talk about with this whole exploration situation. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this for a second. And now we're back to your questions. Okay, so again, what we want to do is we want to add specific details. We want to fix our answers. We want to see if we had the right answer, and we're going to go from there. Now, why am I starting with these questions? Well, to be honest, there's a lot of myths related to Columbus and his journeys. And there's a lot of misinformation out there as the years go on. Okay, so some people think they might have heard something about Columbus's journeys, and then who knows if it's even true. All right, and let's start with this first question as the perfect example. Did people believe the world was flat? And how do you know? Obviously, as many of you all found out, the overwhelming answer is no. People during the time of Columbus, even at that time, did not think that the world was flat. They did not think that they were going to go too far and fall off the edge. Nothing like that. Okay. But the how do you know? Well, if you looked at the article, you have a lot of evidence that they knew that the Earth was not flat. They knew the Earth was round. And I'm going to bring up this map of the known world from back then. And you can even tell, kind of similar to what we've already seen, here's Europe, and here's kind of a wonky Africa, and Asia looks pretty decent. Not perfect, but pretty decent. But they did not think that the world was flat, and if you went too far, you would fall off the edge. They knew the world was round, and in the article, it even said there's some evidence of even before the time of Jesus that a lot of societies knew that the earth was round and not flat. Okay, but what they did think and what Columbus thought was that he could go west and he would end up going around the backside of the earth and ending up over here. Okay, now ironically, Columbus does think that he landed in India. He feels like he found it. So he even calls the local people Indians. But we know now he didn't land over here, right? He landed in what is now kind of Central or South America. So ironically, the word Indian that we still use today in the United States is all because of a mix up. All right. The Indians that we know in the United States were called Indians because Columbus and other explorers thought that that's where they were. And for more than 500 years, nobody decided to go back and change it. Okay. So it's all kind of a mix up as far as why we use that anyway. All right. So back to your questions. So did people believe the world was flat? No. How do you know? Again, because people for many, many years had known that it was round. Columbus knew that it was round. He just felt like he could get around it faster than everybody else. Okay. The next question was kind of difficult, and I even broke it down in this red answer because there was a lot of answers that were out there, and I looked at them, and technically speaking, a whole lot of them are right. So let's break down how you might have seen this question. About how many days did the first voyage of Columbus take? Okay, well, there's a couple ways to look at this. First thing is, if you guys read the article, you might have read the part about where the boats have to actually stop. And they do stop kind of on the coast of Africa, right over here, to make repairs to one of their ships. So going from where they were leaving, kind of over by Spain, and coming down here to these islands to fix their ship, and staying to fix the ship, took about a month. Okay. Now, from that point on, it takes them about another month to get to their first landing. Okay. So this is what it says. From start to finish, the voyage took 67 days, or 9 weeks and 4 days. And that's basically in two parts. Okay. Some of you all answered about 29 days or 36 days or whatever your number was. That's also true, but that's just how long they did not see land. Okay, so like I said, that's a complex answer, but basically, that's how you can break that one down. So they stopped for about a month after kind of messing up the one boat, and then once they headed over the Atlantic Ocean, it took them about 29 and or 36 days, depending on how you look at it. Okay, now here's the other way you could see this question. Columbus would arrive back in Spain on March 15th, 1493, making the entire round trip about 221 days. So if you actually read the thing as how long was the entire voyage and not just them getting to the New World, that's even longer. Okay, so that's 221 days. So that's why this one is pretty complicated. And if you had any one of those types of answers, I'm pretty good with it. All right. The opinion question I'm going to leave to you all, but what did you know about his ships? Okay. If you just put, I didn't know anything, you guys, you got to change that. Okay. Everybody knows at least a little bit about Columbus or his boats or that there were 3 ships or the name of the 3 ships or what year he sailed. So that one's not a freebie. Okay. You still have to have at least one pretty solid answer, but it is your opinion. Okay. The next one down, did Columbus know that he had found a new world? And how do you know? Well, again, the short answer to this is no. And we're going to use this map again. Columbus does not know that he has landed in a new area. He has convinced himself, and rightly so, it makes sense. He did not know that they had landed in 2 entirely different continents that nobody knew about up to that point. He really thought that he had gone around the entire globe and landed over here in some undiscovered part of China or undiscovered part of India. So he really thought that he had landed on this other side, and he believed that until the day that he died in 1506. Okay? It's not until about 1507 that some other explorers start thinking, Columbus might have actually found some new area over here that we have not discovered yet. So it's not until about a year after his death that anybody really comes up with the idea that, he might have found something completely new. Okay? So the short answer again, did he know that he found a new world? No. How do you know? Because even up to his death, he believed that he had landed in the Indies or some part of Asia. Okay? So let's talk about this one as well with the map. Did Columbus technically discover America, and how do you know? Well, there's a couple ways to answer this. I got a few different answers, so I'm going to make this map bigger so we can use it, okay? There's a couple ways to look at this, and this map is actually a route for every one of Columbus's 4 journeys. He actually made 4 trips to the New World. Again, even though he didn't know it was a new world. And if you notice, some of you all put as part of your answer that technically he does not discover America because nowhere that he landed is part of the United States. And that's actually true, right? He lands in places what are now the Bahamas and places like Cuba, and all these little areas kind of where they explore above South America. But nowhere does he land that is affiliated today with the United States. Okay, so that technically is a no because of that reason. And other people even further said that no, technically he does not discover America because even the places he did land, they had people there already, right? So how can you technically discover something where people are already living there? And that's true too. Okay. So did Columbus technically discover America? No. And for both those reasons, right? He didn't land anywhere in the current United States, and the places are pretty much already inhabited. Now, this leads to kind of a side question of why is Columbus always given kind of the credit for discovering the New World? Well, that's a tricky question, but I'll be honest with you all. The main reason is even though Columbus did not land in like the United States, and even though Columbus did not land in places where nobody had discovered it or found it before because there was already people living there, he's given credit because he opens up all of this land eventually for the Europeans, especially Spain. Okay, so he's given the credit as being this great explorer because even though people live there, they didn't know about it. All right, so this pretty much expanded the entire known world by about 50%. Right, they added like a whole half of a globe, a whole half of a map to what they had known at the time. So it's a pretty big deal. So being that he's the first one to go over there and they land in what is now the Bahamas and near Cuba, he's given credit for being the first guy to go over there and at least start looking at it. Okay, even though he didn't know what he had found. All right, so let's get back with these last couple questions. Where did America get vespucci name? Well, everybody pretty much got this one right, that the term America comes a few years later from another explorer named Amerigo Vespucci. Now, that's ironic that this guy with a crazy name, Amerigo Vespucci, is given credit, but really, he is somebody who's going to go explore in areas what are now considered to be part of North and South America. The only weird part is they used his first name, and there's no confirmation of historical records of why they decided to do that. They just started calling these areas over here the Amerigos or Americas, and otherwise we'd be known as North and South Vespucci, which would have been fantastic, but I'll stick with America for now. Okay, last but not least, did Columbus get rich from his travels? How do you know? Well, this is a complex question, but let's make it really easy. Did Columbus get rich in the short term? Yeah, he did get quite a few riches from his travels. He obviously was well liked early on for having discovered all this stuff. But as his life goes on, he makes more and more journeys and spends more and more money, and he starts to make a few enemies, or people think that he's just making way too many journeys over there, wasting his time. So he does lose quite a bit of money, and he loses kind of his rank, I guess you could call it. It says in the article his titles and different things like that. And by the time of his death, is he absolutely completely poor? Not necessarily. I mean, he got some of his money back and a little bit of his respect back, but overall, he's not going to be the same. So did Columbus get rich from his travels? Again, in the short term, kind of yes. But by the end, he's lost quite a bit of it, or he spent quite a bit of it. And he's not completely poor, but it's just not the same. Okay, so again, for your overall activity for today, like I said, you all, I need you to go back and just make the adjustments. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it's going to be on the honor system. So you don't have to send me a picture, you don't have to send me a Google Doc of all your changes, but you know how this works. When I make a quiz or a test and include questions about this, since we took all the time to talk about this, I'm going to add a lot of details. Details that you should know by watching this thing and listening to all the information. So you don't have to send me a picture today. You don't have to send me an update of your notebook page, but just know that I'm really hoping that you took my advice and added the details that you needed to add. Okay? As always, I hope you all are staying safe and doing well out there, and I'll talk to you soon.